Welcome to my PhD defense presentation. I'm happy that you're all here today. And so in my thesis, I explored the possibilities of using spray coating for the fabrication of organic electronics. And the motivation of the thesis was twofold. So here you see a picture of a glacier from 2001 in Greenland. And this is the same glacier 4 years later. And so here we see the direct effect of global warming. And one possible option to deal with these kind of problems can be the use of organic electronics, because these kind of electronics are very energy efficient. They are produced at lower temperatures. And one of these organic electronics are, for example, organic solar cells, which use the power of the sun to create green energy. However, there's another problem. So nature or wildlife is also affected by the vast amount of plastic litter we release into our oceans every year. It's actually millions of tons every year. And nowadays you can find plastic, especially in the form of microplastic, everywhere on the planet, from the Arctic down to the deep sea level. And this, of course, affects not only wildlife, but it also affects us humans. Because as you may know, microplastic has been found not only in human organs, but also in the human bloodstream recently. And we still know very little about the toxicity of these microplastic particles. So one possible way to deal with this kind of problem could be the use of plant-based plastics, because they are supposed to be biodegradable. They come from regrowing resources, and they can also be biocompatible. And in the introduction, we already heard about the sustainable development goals. And here I used a slightly different representation of these goals, because here you can see that sustainability is actually a very complex topic, and it consists of 3 different aspects. And we have the biosphere as the foundation for society and also the economy aspects. And in this thesis, it was important to understand that, yes, we have to make sustainable adaptations, but these adaptations should also be positive or attractive to the industry and the economy. And this was kind of the objective of my thesis. So I used cellulose from trees. Cellulose is a special kind of cellulose. It has many negative charges, and therefore it's well dispersible in water, which was important for the spray aspect of this thesis. And with cellulose is known to form highly transparent foils, but also of high tensile strength. Then I used spray coating for the fabrication of all my electronics, because it's a very fast technique, it's facile, and as you will see in the presentation, it's also a very versatile technique. And another nice thing about it is that it's actually conform to the shape of the substrate. And so this is also a reason why spray coating is nowadays already highly used in the industry. So what I did then is I took the cellulose, so the sustainable part, with the industrial relevant technique, spray coating, to make organic electronics. And here you can see this is an example of the classic organic solar cell. And these kind of electronics are lightweight. They can be flexible and very thin. And you can use them in many different fields, in the medical sector, but for electronics, in the energy sector, in the form of solar cells, and so on. And as you can see in this model, these organic electronics consist of layers, or these are multi-layer systems. And this means I had to use surface-sensitive techniques, so AFM, SEM, sheet resistance measurements, and importantly, the X-ray scattering. Because with X-rays, we can probe our samples down to the nano and angstrom scale to actually understand the structure of our materials. But on the other hand, it's also a non-destructive technique, very fast. And if you work under a grazing incidence, you can get very high statistics. And you can also combine this X-ray scattering technique with other techniques, such as a heater, for example. You can heat your sample during the measurements, or of course, you can combine it with a spray nozzle. And so I divided my talk today into 3 different sections with a special focus on the conductivity. We will start with the cellulose foils. And here I will show you how I optimized the spray process in order to make super thin cellulose substrate foils. And in the second part, I will show you how important the influence of the spray ink formulation actually is for the conductivity of such electrodes. And in the final part, I will show you that you can use spray deposition not only for the fabrication of organic electronics, but also for their quality enhancement. But let's start with the cellulose foils. Okay. Yeah, so in this project, I used wood-based tempocellulose in order to replace the usually used synthetic polymers as sustainable, transparent substrate material in organic electronics. And so I had to develop a novel fabrication protocol, and with that we were able to make the, to this date, thinnest sprayed cellulose foil. And in these 3 videos, I will show you how it's done. So in this first video, you can see here the cellulose solution in water is sprayed directly, layer by layer, on a hot silicon substrate. And then I simply took this wafer and put it into a water bath. And you can see that you simply can peel off this foil. So this is only tempocellulose, nothing else in it. And in the third video here, you can see one of my first foils, one of the first results. You can see it's highly transparent, low basis rate, high optical transmission. And actually, the average thickness of these foils, I gave here 2 micrometers. However, this is kind of a compromise. I can make thin or spray thinner foils, but then it becomes more challenging to actually peel them off without breaking them, like peel them off on a large scale. So this 2 micrometers was kind of a compromise here. Okay, so yeah, how did I do it? So in general, the spray process can be divided into 4 different steps. The first step is you take your solution, fill your nozzle with it, and then you press the solution through the nozzle opening under a certain pressure. And this will then lead to the atomization of this liquid into tiny droplets, and they are then deposited on, in our case, hot substrate. And in the second step, coalesce and form a wetting layer. Third step, we have the evaporation of the solvent, and the final step, the 4th step, describes the formation of the solid film. And then I went into this process and optimized it by changing the droplet flight. So here you can change, for example, the flow rate or the distance. Then I optimized the wetting behavior by using silicon wafers and a special cleaning procedure. And in the last step, I also adjusted the temperature of the substrate. And yeah, by doing that, you can spray tempocellulose. You make various different kinds of film composites, or compositions, sorry. So here, for example, this is a material mixed foil. So we took P.PSS, this is a conductive polymer blend. I will go into the details later. But for now, it's only important we have a conductive polymer, we have the tempocellulose, mix it together in water and spray this mix directly. And this is how we made these conductive foils. But of course, you can also take simply your cellulose foil and then you coat it. In this case, we took silver nanowires, coat them on top. But you can also make a multi-layer stack. So first you spray some layers of cellulose, then some layers of silver nanowires, and so on and so on. And actually, this different composition affects also the properties of these foils. And this is what I want to explain on these two examples here. So here you can see the transmission in the optical range. And in green here, we have again the tempo cellulose, only tempo cellulose. It's not conductive, but highly transparent. Then in the green case, we see the coated foil. And there's also a video here. So this is an example of such a coated foil. It's coated with the silver nanowires. You can see it's transparent. And you can also see it's conductive. So what we see here is the resistance, not the conductivity. So low resistance means high conductivity. But you can also see that this foil is a bit prone to the mechanical deformation. So the values are not so stable here, okay? But when we now go to the mixed type, which is the blue one, we can see this foil is not so transparent anymore, but it's highly conductive. And you can see the values are very stable. So in the end, your final application dictates what kind of foil you would use. So, and like to go another step further, we explored the possibilities of hygroscopicity. So it's well known that cellulose is highly attracted to water or vice versa, yeah, because we have many hydroxyl groups there. And what happens is that the water goes in between the cellulose chains, and this leads to a loss of the mechanical strength of the paper, for example. And this is a well-known problem in the paper industry, actually. But here I thought maybe we can make something nice out of it, something positive, yeah. And so I took my foils and actually I took them out of the water bath, so they are still soaked with water. And then I put them into three-dimensional shapes and simply let them dry overnight. Nothing else. And this is how you can make these three-dimensional shapes. So this is, again, this multi-layer foil we saw before. And you can see it's freestanding, it's also self-supporting, and it's also conductive. Exactly. So now you saw that you can make actually very nice things by only using spray coating and cellulose. And another example are nanocomposite electrodes. So here we will discuss now the influence of the ink formulation. So in this project, we used the concept of composite materials. So we took the highly conductive, flexible silver nanowires as filament as the conductive nanocomposite electrodes. And here again, we tested two different compositions. So on top, you have the orange or the coated type again. This is a two-step process. So here we first sprayed a layer of TCNF, and then we sprayed the nanowires on top. And the nanowires here were an isopropanol. We directly took the TCNF and the nanowires, mixed them in water, and sprayed this mix directly. And here you can see the results. So you can directly see, if you compare blue and orange, that the blue electrode performs much better because it has a lower final resistance, and it also becomes more conductive after less amounts of sprays. And I want to look into the details why that actually is. So, yeah, the contrast is a bit low, but I hope you can see it, yeah. So in the right corner, you see an image of how the mixed ink is actually, what is going on in the mixed ink on the nanoscale. So we have here, again, the silver nanowires in green. They are then coated with a polymer called PVP. This has something to do with the synthesis of the nanowires. It doesn't matter right now. What matters is that this PVP polymer has carbonyl groups. So the carbonyl groups can actually form hydrogen bonding with the hydroxyl groups of the cellulose. So what happens, or what can happen, is that the cellulose arranges itself around the silver nanowires. And what we have then is, we have On one hand, static repulsion, because we have the cellulose in between the nanowires, but we also have electrostatic repulsion, because the cellulose is negatively charged. And we can see this effect directly again on our two electrode types. So these are the same types we discussed already. In orange, it's the coated type, and these black lines you see are the silver nanowires. And you see in the orange case, they are well distributed over the whole sample, but the dispersion is not so good because you have these many black spots. These are actually agglomerates of silver nanowires, so many nanowires sticking together, which is bad for the conductivity. On the other hand, if you look on the mixed type in blue, we see that the nanowires are well distributed, but also well dispersed, which enhances the conductivity. Another important factor is the network formation. And from percolation theory, we know that the conductivity of a nanowire network actually depends on the percolation. So this means it depends on the number or density of nanowires in the system, but it also depends on the aspect ratio. Yeah, it makes sense. The longer your nanowires, the higher the probability that they will cross or find each other in the system. And in this publication here, they investigated the curviness or the effect of curviness, because actually the longer your nanowires are, the more curved they will be actually in your electrode. And you can see here they compared a highly curved electrode, nanowire, which has a small effective radius, and a less curved nanowire, which has a large effective radius. And what they found is that the percolation threshold actually increases with increasing curviness. And this is exactly, again, what we see for our electrodes. So again, the same two types. In orange, the coated one, we see that the nanowires are highly curved, while in the mixed one, they are less curved. And sorry, this is the reason why this mixed type actually becomes faster or more conductive after less spray pulses. And then finally, once this percolated network is formed, the resistance in the electrode depends on the contact resistance between the two nanowires. And you can enhance this by different techniques. You can use mechanical pressing to increase the contact. You can also use high temperatures to melt the metal together. But there's actually a quite smart other approach, which is shown here in this image from this publication. It's called cold welding. So what they did here, they started with a silver nanowire network. Maybe I should do it here. Yeah. And then they add moisture to the network. In our case, the moisture was already there because we had a water-based ink. Okay. And then when the water evaporates, this cold welding happens, which actually forces them or draw the nanowires closer together, which enhances the conductivity drastically. And what is actually happening, you see in picture B here. So they call this a liquid bridge. So it's the water between the two nanowires. But if you look closely, this is actually simply a meniscus. We all know meniscus from capillary, right? So there are capillary forces which draw the nanowires closer together. And this is how this cold welding process works. And again, we compared it to different electrode types. We see here in orange, where we had isopropanol as the solvent. The nanowires are quite lay stiff on top of each other, not really close together. In the mixed type, you can see how well attached they are to each other, which again explains why the mixed type is So in summary, the mixed type is the winner here. And so I used it on the left side. I sprayed a transparent electronic circuit. So this red thing here is a diode. And it will light up now as soon as I close the circuit. Yeah, exactly. So instead of copper wiring, in between there I sprayed the type 2 ink. on a transparent PET substrate. And you can see also when I like deform it, the diode keeps shining. On the right side, I used again the mixed type, but I sprayed it as an anode in an organic LED. So I sprayed it on this glass wafer, and when I close the contact, you see the LED lights up. So it works, which is nice. Okay, so now you saw many applications or things you can fabricate with spray coating. In the final section now, I want to show you that you can use it for a different approach. So in this project, we used spray coating to first fabricate PEDOT-PSS-based electrodes. And then in the second step, we used the same spray setup to enhance the quality of these electrodes, to make them more conductive. And we did this by using 3 different organic solvents: isopropanol, DMSO, and methanol. And this is one example here just to illustrate the process. So here you see again, we have here the resistance. So low values means high conductivity for each of the 3 solvents. And you see with increasing spray volume, the resistance decreases. And we have the least effect for the isopropanol in red and the largest effect for the DMSO here in green. And yeah, I will now explain to you why that is actually. So I already mentioned PEDOT-PSS before. It's a conductive polymer blend. So this means we have PEDOT. This is the conductive polymer, but it's also hydrophobic. And then we have the PSS. It's insulating, non-conductive, but it's actually hydrophilic. And so what happens when you mix them together, they form nanoparticles, where the conductive PEDOT part is in the middle, and the insulating PSS is around it as a shell, but makes it water soluble, so we can actually use it in solvent-based techniques like spray coating. And this is then how a layer would look like after you spray these particles and let them dry. So again, here in blue, we have the PEDOT. They form these pancake-shaped islands, let's say. And in between, we have the PSS in gray. So what we have to do is now, we use these organic polar solvents to change this film morphology to make it more conductive. All right, so similar as for the silver nanowires, where we already talked about percolation, here we used solvent annealing to enhance the percolation of the PEDOT in our electrode. So on the very left side, in orange here, this is the sprayed electrode before. Pure PEDOT-PSS, it's orange, you see it's really intermixed, and the scale here actually means that the darker the colors, the more PSS we have, and the brighter the colors or more yellow, this is representative for PEDOT, for the conductive part. So, and here we see the results after the solvent annealing. So let's start with the isopropanol. We see that here we have a formation of darker spots, which represents the PSS, but all in all, the films look quite similar still, right? When we then go to the methanol, we see now the formation of these yellow pathways, which is the conductive PEDOT, which enhances the percolation, so enhances the conductivity. And then finally, for the DMSO, we have the most drastic change. Here we have a well-percolated network of PEDOT, meaning, which explains why DMSO was the most effective solvent in this experiment. However, the conductivity of such an electrode does not only depend on the percolation, but also, also on order. So in polymer films, actually, the degree of order is really important for the conductivity. So on the left side, you have a completely amorphous polymer film, so no order at all, no conductivity. Yeah, but when you then increase the order, which we did by spraying these organic solvents on top, you actually enhance the order by enhancing the degree of molecular stacking. And then, so in red, these are conductive pathways here. And the more you do this, the more of these ordered regions, which we also call crystalline domains, will appear in your film, and they are highly conductive. So what we did here, we compared the average size of these crystalline domains in the polymer film. And again, the results very well correlate with our observations from the conductivity measurements. So for the isopropanol, we found the smallest crystalline domains, while for the DMSO, we found the largest ones. And then finally, the kind of the limiting factor of such a polymer system is actually the distance between the polymer chains, so this distance here. And we call this pi stacking. And the larger this distance is, the tougher it is for the charge to travel, so less conductive. So what we want to put it together. We want small distance, so easy charge transfer. And so again, we tested also that, again, for the 3 different solvents. And it correlates very well, again, with the results. So for the isopropanol, we found the largest distances, while for methanol and DMSO, the distances decreased, which explains their higher conductivity. So this was a short summary of my PhD thesis with a special focus on conductivity. But of course, there's always room to do more. And so in my 4th manuscript, I focus more on the sustainable production via spray deposition. And it's more also focused on the photoactive layer of the solar cell. So here, green solvents instead of the toxic halogenated solvents for the fabrication of the photoactive layer in a solar cell. However, in this project, we found a conflict between a good film formation, which is important for the conductivity in this layer, and the sustainable production, meaning the use of green solvents. So more work needs to be done in this regard. What I'm also currently working on is to enhance the transparency of the silver nanowire electrodes by actually using nanowires of a thinner diameter. And finally, in the picture below here, we did a long time stability test. So this is again the mixed type, the winner from the second part of my presentation. And I stored this electrode once, both under ambient conditions, so room temperature, everything. But one was stored in the dark, and the other one was stored at daylight. And you can immediately see the drastic effect of the UV radiation. And it was also seen in the conductivity value. So this one here was almost non-conductive. So what this tells us is that in the future, at some point, if you want to use actually these organic electronics, you need to think how to protect them against humidity, temperature, UV. And so you need some kind of sealing, you need some kind of coverage. And this, in the best case, should also be sustainable. So this is also something we should look more into. And with that, I come to the end of my talk. And I want to acknowledge all the people who joined me during these 4 years. It was really nice time. First of all, I want to thank, of course, my supervisors, Stephan, Daniel, Mats. Thank you very, very much for all the support, all the help, and so on. I also want to acknowledge my collaborators and co-authors. Then, of course, DSF and Helmholtz for funding this work. And I'm actually part of 2 different groups. So I have one group, in the upper picture is the group in Germany, my DESY group, and in the picture below, it's my Swedish group. Many, many thanks for the nice 4 years. And with that, I want to thank you for your attention. Thanks for taking the time, and thank you.